Today I was in campus in my university and it's July. People are graduating today. And don't get me wrong, I was cheerfully and happy for them, you know. But something got me thinking to make this video today. And you'd see somewhere in most Kenyan homes, there's a wall which is like this. There's certificates on the wall which are framed and they're even lined up, right? From primary school, secondary, and even the degree, sometimes even the graduation photo, which is right next to it, the gown and all, the regalia. You know, it goes up like a warranty card. Proof that something was promised and paid for, and delivered. But nobody reads the fine print on a warranty card, though. Turns out this one had some. You know, and honestly speaking, there's an actual term economists used for what's been happening to degrees for the last few decades. They call it credential inflation. Sometimes it's called more bluntly diploma disease. It's like the phrase coined back in the 70s by a researcher named Ronald Doe, who was studying exactly this pattern in developing countries, you know, or developing economies. And the mechanism is almost mechanically simple once you see it laid out. A degree isn't just knowledge, right? We all know this. It's also a signal, a shortcut employers use to guess who's capable without testing everyone from scratch. I mean, that idea comes from an economist named Michael Spence, who argued education works partly as a costly signal of ability, you know, separate from whatever skills actually got taught along the way. You know, here's the problem with the signal though. It only works if it's actually scarce. The moment everyone can send the same signal, I mean, come on, it stops telling employers anything useful. And they have to start looking for a rare signal to sort people by instead. You know, and when you look at the Kenyan university sector, has expanded enormously. Okay, over the last 2 decades. I mean, just do the research. There's more public universities, there's more campuses, there's more self-sponsored parallel programs, right? More private institutions, all producing far more graduates than existed a generation ago. you know and that expansion wasn't a mistake by the there's more access to higher education, on its own, which is genuinely a good thing. But research on credential devaluation is consistent on what tends to happen next when the supply of degree holders grows faster than the number of skilled jobs actually being created. What I mean here is the decrementing power of the credential itself declines, you know, not because the degree became worthless, but because it stopped being rare enough to sort anyone by. Come on, guys, now. You all know this. And there's a specific finding in this research I'm sitting with here. Something economists call the sheep's skin effect, you know, and they'd say wages don't rise smoothly with each year of schooling, they jump sharply, right at the moment someone crosses a credential threshold, like when you finish the degree, getting the actual paper, you know, even when the first final year, even when that final year taught you the even when the final year taught them in raw skill terms about as much as any other year did, which tells you something a little uncomfortable here. A meaningful chunk of what a degree pays for isn't the learning, it's the paper itself, the completed threshold, the ability to check a box on an application form. I mean, and that's exactly the part the credential inflation eats first, not the knowledge. The paper's power to sort you from everyone else holding the paper, the same paper actually. That's how they sort you out. And usually I go back and forth on how bitter to be about this, honestly, because I don't think the answer is don't get the degree. You know, Kenyans youths, Kenyan youth unemployment measured narrowly sits in the mid-teens as an official rate. But that number hides more than it reveals here because a huge share of young graduates aren't unemployed exactly. They are underemployed. We are working jobs that don't need the degree, they went into debt for. Instead, an informal economy that absorbs the overwhelmingly majority of the working population regardless of what's framed on their wall. You know, the certificate isn't fake. The market just changed what it's actually worth. The market itself, you know, quietly, sometime between when you enrolled and when you walked across that stage. And here's what I think the fine print actually says on the warranty card. If you translate it properly, the certificate was never a guarantee. It was a warranty on the version of the job market that existed the year you started the degree. Maybe for years, sometimes even more, even before the year you'd actually try to cash it in. You know, I mean, come on, guys. Markets move faster than degree programs do. You know, by the time the inks dry on the certificate, that specific job market it was designed to unlock has usually already moved on to wanting something slightly different. Even sometimes something the certificate alone doesn't fully cover anymore. Now, even right now, we're even entering that world in the AI era. You know, but I don't think that makes the year wasted though. And I really don't want to be. I want to be careful not to land there actually in anything getting wasted. Because plenty of what actually gets built during a degree, like let's say how you think, how to research, who you meet, you know, the discipline of finishing something hard, you know, trying to know if you can stick to something long term, you know, that doesn't expire the way the papers signal power does. That part is actually real, and that's the part I usually enjoy, bro. And that is yours regardless of what the job market decides that the certificate is worth this particular year, you know. But the paper itself, treated as, treated as a guarantee rather than a starting point, expired closer to the day it was issued than anyone tells you at graduation. You know, it's worth knowing this going in for those who are coming for the first year instead of finding out standing in front of the wall. You are there looking at the wall, everything, but you are nowhere near where you are supposed to be. You're wondering why the warranty card stopped covering what it used to, you know. And anyway, guys, don't get me wrong. For if you're watching this, I mean, probably the certificates are probably still up on that wall. They're framed exactly where they've always been. But it's worth asking, every few years, whether actually keeping you employable is still the paper, or whether it quietly became something else a while ago, and the frames just is just the last one to know. I know, guys. Thanks for watching.